The bridge of the horizon's edge was quiet. Admiral stood near the large observation window, looking out at the endless black of space. Stars stretched in every direction like scattered diamonds. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound. Had served in the fleet for 32 years. He had seen many strange things in the galaxy. He had met creatures made of living crystal. He had spoken with beings who existed as clouds of gas. He had walked on worlds where the sky burned orange and the rain fell upward. But today, something felt different. Something felt wrong. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Commander Park from her tactical station. Her voice was calm but tight. "We are receiving a transmission. It is coming from the Galactic Conclave." Turned slowly. The Galactic Conclave. 12 alien species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They rarely spoke to humanity. When they did, it was never good news. "Put it through," he said. The air in front of the main screen shimmered. A figure appeared. It was tall, nearly 3 meters high. Its body looked like it was made of dark blue crystal. Light moved inside it like slow lightning. This was one of the oldest and most powerful species in the conclave. "I am voice," the creature said. Its words did not come from a mouth. They seemed to vibrate through the air itself. "I speak for the Galactic Conclave. I bring a message for the species called humanity." Clasped his hands behind his back. "I am Admiral, I will hear your message." This crystal body pulsed with cold light. "Your kind has expanded too far, too fast. Your colonies on the outer rim have entered sacred territories. This is not permitted. The Conclave has decided. You will withdraw all human presence from these regions within 30 solar cycles. If you do not, we will remove you ourselves." Park's fingers stopped moving over her console. The entire bridge crew had gone still. Could feel their eyes on him, waiting to see how he would respond. "These territories were empty when we arrived," said. "We found no settlements, no stations, no signs of any species living there." "They are sacred," repeated. The words seemed to echo. "They belong to the Conclave. Your presence there is an insult. You will leave or you will be destroyed. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning, your only warning." The hologram flickered and vanished. The bridge remained silent for a long moment. "Well," said quietly, "that was direct." Park stood from her station. She was young for her rank, only 34, but she had earned her position through skill and courage. "Admiral, did you notice something about that transmission?" "I noticed many things, Lieutenant Commander. What caught your attention?" "The way he spoke to us." She walked closer to him, lowering her voice. He was not speaking to equals. He was speaking to children, to animals. He expected us to simply obey. Nodded slowly. He had noticed the same thing. They had not been angry or afraid. It had been annoyed, like a farmer dealing with pests in his field. "Dr. Lee," he called across the bridge. "Join us, please." Dr. Lee looked up from her science station. She was the ship's, an expert on alien species. She had spent her entire career studying the creatures of the galaxy. She walked over to the Admiral, pushing her dark hair behind her ears. "I want to know how the Conclave sees us," said. "Pull up whatever records you can find. I want to understand what we are dealing with." Lee nodded and returned to her station. Her fingers danced across the console. Data filled her screen. After several minutes, she frowned. "This is interesting," she said. "According to Conclave records, humanity is classified as a Category 7 species." "What does that mean?" Park asked. "It means prey." Lee turned to face them. Her expression was troubled. "The Conclave classifies all species on a scale. Category 1 through 4 are predator species. They are seen as dangerous, worthy of respect. Category 5 through 8 are prey species. They are considered weak, easily controlled." She paused. "We are Category 7, nearly the bottom." Raised an eyebrow. "On what basis?" "Physical characteristics. We are soft-bodied. We have no natural weapons like claws or venom. Our senses are average. We are small compared to most spacefaring species. We live short lives. We die easily. She pulled up more data. The Conclave believes our rapid expansion is not a sign of strength. They think we are scurrying like frightened animals trying to escape a predator. They see our colonies as nests, not conquests. The bridge was very quiet now. Could feel anger building in his chest, but he kept his face calm. They think we are mice, Park said. Her voice was hard. They think we are less than mice, Lee corrected. They think we are insects, something to be stepped on if we become annoying. Walked back to the observation window. He looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, 10,000 warships were preparing to destroy everything humanity had built, and the beings commanding those ships did not even consider humans worthy of real fear. Admiral, Park stepped up beside him. What are you thinking? He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but cold. I am thinking about Earth, about our history. Do you know what made us the dominant species on our planet, Lieutenant Commander? Intelligence, technology. Those came later. He turned to face her. His eyes were dark and steady. Before we had fire, before we had tools, before we had language, we had something else. We had hunger. We had the will to survive at any cost. Every creature that threatened us is now gone. The great cats that hunted us are in zoos. The giant bears are memories. The wolves became our pets. He looked back at the stars. We did not climb to the top of our food chain by being prey. We climbed there by being patient, by being clever, and by being absolutely ruthless when we needed to be. Lee had come to stand with them. The Conclave does not know this, she said. They see our bodies and assume they understand us. They have made a mistake. Yes, agreed. They have forgotten what made us who we are. They look at humans and see soft skin and short lives. They do not see the wolf hiding behind our eyes. Park crossed her arms. So what do we do? Admiral was silent for a long time. The stars continued their slow dance outside the window. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a decision that would change history. We remind them, he said. We remind them that we are not prey. We never were. And if they want to learn that lesson the hard way, then we will teach them. He turned and walked toward the command chair. His crew watched him with new energy in their eyes. Send a message to Earth Command, he ordered. Tell them the Conclave has given us 30 days. Tell them we will need every ship, every soldier, and every weapon we have. He sat down and looked at the main screen. The galaxy thinks we are prey. It is time to show them what humans really are. The bridge erupted into activity. Officers shouted orders. Consoles beeped and flashed. The great ship began to turn, heading back toward Earth. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the Galactic Conclave waited, confident in their power, certain of their victory. They had no idea what was coming. The Global Defense Council met in Seoul, in a building that had stood for 200 years. It was built of steel and glass, but its foundations went deep into the earth, protected against any attack. This was where humanity made its most important decisions. General Jin stood at the front of the great chamber. She was 60 years old, with short hair and a face marked by decades of service. She had fought in the Mars insurrection. She had led the defense of Colony 7 against pirates. She had buried more soldiers than she could count. Now, she faced the greatest challenge of her career. Around her sat the leaders of Earth, presidents, prime ministers, generals, and admirals from every nation. They had all received the news. The Conclave had given them 30 days to surrender their outer colonies, 30 days before war. Thank you all for coming, Jin began. Her voice was calm and clear. You have read the reports. You know what we face. The Galactic Conclave commands a fleet of over 10,000 warships. They have technology we do not fully understand. They have resources beyond counting. And they have given us 1 month to decide our fate. Murmurs filled the chamber. Fear was visible on many faces. But before we talk about strategy, Jin continued, I want to talk about history, our history. Because I believe the Conclave has made a terrible mistake, and that mistake is our greatest weapon." She pressed a button and the wall behind her lit up with images. Ancient cave paintings, stone weapons, the bones of great beasts. 200,000 years ago, humans were weak. We were small. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. The world was filled with predators that were bigger, stronger, and faster than us. By every measure, we should have died. We should have been nothing but food for the lions and the wolves. She changed the image. Now it showed humans hunting, working together, surrounding a massive mammoth with spears. But we did not die. We adapted. We learned to work together. We learned to make tools. We learned to think ahead, to plan, to wait. Her voice grew harder. And most importantly, we learned to fight, not just to defend ourselves, but to hunt, to pursue, to never ever stop until our enemy was destroyed. The room was silent now. Everyone was listening. The Conclave sees us as prey. They look at our bodies and see weakness. They do not see what lies beneath. Jin pointed at the screen, now showing images of human warfare through the ages. Armies marching, ships sailing, planes filling the sky. Every species we ever faced as predators is now extinct, endangered, or under our control. We did not beat them by being stronger. We beat them by being smarter, more patient, and more ruthless. She let those words hang in the air. The Conclave has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They have not fought a real war in all that time. They have forgotten what it means to face an enemy who will not submit. They are about to remember. Far from Earth, in the cold darkness between stars, Captain Wu guided his small ship through enemy territory. The vessel was called the Silent Moon, a scout ship designed for stealth. It had a crew of only 5, but they were the best at what they did. "How close are we?" Wu asked. He was a lean man in his 40s with quick eyes and steady hands. The ship's engineer checked her instruments. She was young, only 28, but she understood machines better than anyone Wu had ever met. "We are approaching the Conclave border station. 3 minutes until visual range." "Ho, keep us hidden," Wu ordered. The pilot, Ho, nodded without looking up. He was flying the ship manually, using his skill to avoid detection systems that would catch any automated pilot. His hands moved smoothly over the controls, guiding the ship through the darkness like a fish through deep water. The border station appeared on their screens. It was massive, a structure of curved metal and glowing lights that stretched for kilometers. Dozens of warships surrounded it, hanging in space like sleeping giants. "Recording everything," said the communications officer. "Getting good data on their ship configurations, weapon placements, shield frequencies." Wu studied the enemy vessels. They were beautiful, he had to admit. Elegant curves, shimmering surfaces, weapons that looked more like art than instruments of war. But something about them bothered him. He said quietly, "What do you see?" Had been staring at her screen with a frown. "Something strange, Captain. These ships are designed to look powerful, but look at their armor distribution. Look at where they place their weapons." She pointed at her display. "These are ships built to intimidate, not to fight. Their shields are forward-focused, meant to block attacks from enemies who face them head-on. Their weapons are all visible, placed where they can be seen. There is no redundancy, no backup systems that I can detect." "What does that mean?" "It means these ships are made to scare weaker species into surrender. They are not made for real combat. No one has seriously attacked the Conclave in thousands of years. They have forgotten how to actually fight." Wu felt something stir in his chest. It was not quite hope, but it was close. "Keep recording," he said. "Earth needs to see this." They watched for 2 more hours, gathering data on enemy movements, communications, and defense patterns. What they learned confirms first impression. The Conclave forces were powerful, yes. They had numbers and technology, but they were soft. They had grown comfortable with their dominance. They expected every conflict to end with the enemy's immediate surrender. As they prepared to leave, Ho spoke for the first time. "Captain, do you think we can actually win this?" Wu was quiet for a moment. He thought about Earth, about his family about the millions of humans spread across dozens of worlds. They were facing an enemy with overwhelming force. By any logical measure, they should have no chance. But logic was not everything. Humans had never been logical about survival. "I think the Conclave has made a mistake," he finally said. "They see our ships and think they know what we can do. They see our numbers and think they have already won. But they do not understand us. They do not understand that we have been fighting for survival since before we could stand upright. War is in our blood. It is in our bones." He looked at his small crew, at the faces of people who had volunteered to fly into enemy territory with almost no chance of escape. "We may not be stronger than them," he said, "but we are meaner, we are more stubborn, and we will never ever give up. That is what makes us dangerous." Back on Earth, General Jin finished her presentation. The chamber was full of new energy. The fear had not disappeared, but it had been joined by something else: determination, pride. "The Conclave expects us to surrender," she said. "They expect us to bow our heads and accept our place as prey, but they have forgotten one simple truth." She looked around the room at the leaders of humanity. Prey does not build starships. Prey does not cross the void between stars. Prey does not look at an enemy 10 times its size and say no. She straightened her uniform. "We are not prey. We never were. We are the species that tamed fire, that split the atom, that walked on the moon and Mars. We are the children of hunters, of warriors, of survivors who faced extinction again and again and refused to die." Her voice rose, filling the chamber. "The Conclave wants to see what humanity is made of. Then let us show them. Let us remind the galaxy why every predator on our world learned to fear the upright apes with their clever hands and their hungry eyes." She slammed her hand down on the podium. "We do not surrender, we do not submit, we hunt." The chamber erupted in shouts of agreement. Decisions were made, orders were given. Across the globe, factories began producing weapons. Shipyards worked day and night. Soldiers said goodbye to their families and prepared for war. The Conclave had given humanity 30 days. Humanity was going to use every single one of them. The 30th day arrived like a storm on the horizon. Across human space, billions of people watched their screens, waiting. Families held each other close. Soldiers stood at their posts. Ships hung in formation at the edge of known space, their crews silent and ready. Admiral stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge. The great ship was no longer alone. Around it, 300 human warships had gathered, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. It was an impressive sight, but it was nothing compared to what waited beyond the border. "The Conclave fleet has arrived," Lieutenant Commander Park reported. Her voice was steady but could see the tension in her shoulders. 10,200 warships. They are forming a blockade. 10,000 ships. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. "Put the visual on screen," ordered. The main display flickered to life. The Conclave fleet filled the screen, ship after ship after ship stretching into the distance. They were beautiful and terrible, their hulls gleaming with alien light, their weapons humming with power. Among them floated massive command vessels, each one the size of a small moon. "We are receiving a transmission," said the communications officer. "It is from the High Arbiter." "Let him speak." The image of the High Arbiter appeared on screen. It was ancient beyond measure, a being that had ruled the Conclave for over 1,000 years. Its form was hard to describe, constantly shifting between solid and liquid, between light and shadow. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Humans," the High Arbiter said, "your time has ended. The 30 cycles have passed. You have not withdrawn from the sacred territories. You have not submitted to the will of the Conclave." Its form pulsed with cold light. "This is your final moment. Surrender now and we will be merciful. Your species will be allowed to live, though in a reduced form. Resist and you will be erased from existence. Every world, every station, every ship, nothing will remain but dust. The transmission cut off. The bridge was silent. Dr. Lee spoke first. Admiral, our sensors indicate that the Conclave is powering their weapons. They are preparing to attack. Nodded slowly. He had expected this. He had prepared for this. For 30 days he had barely slept. For 30 days he had worked with the greatest military minds humanity possessed to create a plan. Not a plan for survival, a plan for victory. Open a channel, he said. Broadcast to all frequencies. I want everyone in the galaxy to hear this. Park worked her console. Channel open, Admiral, you are live. Walked to the center of the bridge. He stood straight and tall, his hands at his sides. Behind him, his crew watched in silence. Across human space, billions of people held their breath. This is Admiral of the United Earth Fleet, he began. His voice was calm, almost gentle. I am speaking to the High Arbiter and the Galactic Conclave. I am also speaking to every species in the galaxy that can hear my words. He paused, letting the silence stretch. 30 days ago, you gave us a warning. You told us to leave our homes or face destruction. You told us to bow our heads and accept our place beneath your feet. You called us prey. You said we would be erased. His expression hardened. Now I will give you our answer. He took a step forward. His eyes locked on the screen where the Conclave fleet waited. We are not your prey. We are not frightened animals you can herd into obedience. For 200,000 years, every predator on our world learned to fear us. Every species that threatened us is now extinct or locked behind bars in our zoos. The great cats, the wolves, the bears, the sharks, all of them brought to their knees by soft-skinned apes who refused to accept their place at the bottom of the food chain. His voice grew colder with each word. You have made a critical error, High Arbiter. You looked at our bodies and thought you understood us. You saw our short lives and thought we were weak. You saw our expansion and thought we were running away. He shook his head slowly. We were not running away. We were hunting. We were spreading across the stars not because we feared what was behind us, but because we hungered for what lay ahead. Park watched her Admiral with pride burning in her chest. Around the bridge, every officer stood taller. You gave us 30 days, continued. You thought that was a kindness, a chance for us to accept the inevitable, but you do not understand humans. 30 days was not a gift. It was a mistake. You gave us time to prepare. You gave us time to plan. You gave us time to remember who we really are. He raised his chin, defiant. We do not submit. We do not surrender. We do not beg for mercy from those who think themselves our masters. We fought our way to the top of our world, and we will fight our way to the top of this galaxy if we must. The Conclave fleet began to move, weapons charging, ships advancing. You want war? His voice rose, filling the bridge, filling the channel, filling the ears of every being in range. Then you will have war. But understand this, we are not like the other species you have conquered. We will not break. We will not flee. We will keep fighting until we have won or until every last human is dead, and even then our ghosts will haunt you. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes burning. Come and take it. The transmission ended. For a moment nothing happened. Then across the human fleet, crews erupted in cheers. The words spread like fire across human space. Come and take it. A challenge, a promise, a declaration of war. Park stepped to the Admiral's side. Sir, the Conclave fleet is moving to attack formation. Good, turned to face his crew. Initiate Protocol Omega. The words sent a wave of activity through the ship. Officers rushed to their stations. Commands were sent. And across human space, a plan that had been decades in the making began to unfold. In hidden shipyards scattered across 100 worlds, lights flickered to life. Ships that had been built in secret, hidden from Conclave sensors, powered up their engines. They were not many compared to the enemy fleet, but they were ready. Sleeper stations activated. Military satellites came online. Defense platforms that the Conclave did not know existed opened their weapons ports and took aim at the stars. On the ground, soldiers who had been waiting in bunkers received their orders. Pilots climbed into their fighters. Marines loaded their weapons and prepared to board enemy vessels. General Jin, watching from Earth, smiled grimly. "So it begins," she said to no one in particular. "May whatever gods are watching have mercy on our enemies, because we will not." The first shots of the war came not from the massive Conclave fleet, but from a tiny human vessel hidden in the debris of a dead moon. The Silent Moon, under Captain Wu's command, had spent the last 30 days positioning itself behind enemy lines. "Fire," Wu ordered. A single missile streaked through space. It was small, barely visible against the vastness of the battlefield. The Conclave did not even notice it until it struck the shield generator of their largest command ship, temporarily disabling its defenses. In that moment of vulnerability, hidden human ships appeared from nowhere, their weapons blazing. They struck the command ship's exposed hull, causing massive damage before vanishing back into the darkness. The Conclave fleet reacted with confusion. This was not how war was supposed to work. Enemies were supposed to face you openly, to fight with honor, to accept their defeat with dignity. What was this? Ambushes, sneak attacks, cowardice. No, not cowardice, something far more dangerous. Admiral watched the battle unfold on his screen. His fleet was holding formation, not yet engaging. Let the Conclave waste their energy chasing shadows. Let them grow frustrated. Let them taste fear for the first time in 3,000 years. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. "They wanted to see what humans are made of. Now they will learn." The war had begun, and humanity was not fighting to survive. Humanity was fighting to win. The Conclave's first assault was meant to end the war in hours. 10,000 ships moved against human space like a wave of destruction. They expected quick surrender. They expected crying and begging. They expected what prey always did when faced with overwhelming force. They were wrong. Commander Iam sat in the command chair of the destroyer Iron Ghost, watching the enemy fleet approach. His ship was small, barely a speck compared to the massive Conclave vessels, but size was not everything. "All units, this is Commander Iam," he broadcast to his strike force. 20 ships, all of them fast and deadly. "Remember your training. We do not face them head-on. We do not give them a target. We are the shadows in the dark. We are the teeth they never see coming." His crew responded with quiet determination. They had all volunteered for this mission. They all knew they might not come back. Execute Pattern 7. The strike force scattered like leaves in a storm. They did not fly toward the enemy fleet. They flew around it, behind it, through it. The Conclave sensors tried to track them, but the human ships were too small, too fast, too many. Iam's first target was a supply convoy. 12 massive cargo ships carrying fuel, food, and ammunition for the invasion force. They were barely defended. Why would they be? No one had ever attacked Conclave supply lines before. The Iron Ghost dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the convoy. Before the enemy could react, missiles were already flying. 3 cargo ships exploded in the first second. 2 more in the next. By the time Conclave warships arrived to respond, Iam and his team were gone, vanished into the darkness between stars. Across the front lines, similar attacks were happening. Human ships struck communication relays, blinding Conclave commanders. They hit repair stations, leaving damaged ships without help. They attacked command vessels, killing admirals and generals in their quarters. It was not war as the Conclave understood it. It was something else, something older, something primal. It was a hunt. Dr. Moon Bora had never expected to be on a warship. She was a scientist, who had spent her career studying how alien minds worked. But war changed things. War needed every advantage. She sat in a small room aboard the horizon's edge, surrounded by screens showing data about conclave species. Admiral had asked her a simple question. What were the enemy's weaknesses? The answer, she realized, was everywhere. The conclave is built on hierarchy, she explained to the assembled officers. Every species in their coalition has a strict command structure. Orders flow from the top down. The beings at the bottom do not think for themselves. They do what they are told. Park leaned forward. So if we remove the leaders, the followers become confused, lost. They will wait for orders that never come. They will hesitate when they should act. Moon Bora pulled up images of conclave military commanders. Kill the admirals and their fleets will stumble. Kill the generals and their armies will freeze. They have not trained their soldiers to think independently. They have trained them to obey. Admiral nodded slowly. Major Shin, your teams are ready. Major Shin stood in the corner of the room. He was a quiet man, compact, and with eyes that never seemed to blink. He commanded the Special Operations Forces, soldiers trained for missions that regular troops could not handle. We are ready, Admiral. Give us targets and we will eliminate them. You will have your targets within the hour. Make every death count. Shin nodded and left the room. He did not waste words. He never did. In the weeks that followed, conclave commanders began to die. An admiral was assassinated in his own command chamber, killed by a bomb hidden in a diplomatic gift. A general was shot through the head by a sniper firing from a distance of 2 kilometers. A fleet master was poisoned at a celebration dinner. Each death sent ripples through the enemy forces. Ships hesitated, attacks faltered, confusion spread like disease. Meanwhile was working miracles. The young engineer had captured pieces of conclave technology during the Silent Moon's reconnaissance mission. Now, she was using them to change the balance of power. Their shield technology is actually quite simple, she explained to Captain Wu, her fingers dancing over holographic displays. It is powerful, yes, but it has no depth. They designed it to stop the kinds of weapons they expected to face. They never imagined anyone would attack differently. Can you break it? Better, I can teach our weapons to ignore it. She grinned, a fierce expression on her young face. Give me 3 days, Captain. I will give you a fleet that can punch through anything they have. True to her word, modifications spread through the human fleet. Weapons that had barely scratched enemy shields now tore through them. Ships that had been outmatched suddenly found themselves fighting on equal ground. But technology was only part of the answer. The real advantage was something deeper. The Battle of Koran Station proved it. A conclave force of 80 ships attacked a human outpost defended by only 12. By every calculation, it should have been a massacre. The humans should have surrendered or fled. They did neither. Commander Iam led the defense. For 6 hours, his 12 ships fought against 80. They used the station itself as cover, darting behind its bulk to avoid enemy fire. They laid traps with mines and debris. They targeted enemy engines, leaving ships drifting and helpless. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found something remarkable. 43 conclave ships destroyed or disabled. Only 2 human ships lost. And I am, wounded but alive, still commanding from a bridge filled with smoke and sparks. How did you do it? Admiral asked later, visiting I am in the medical bay. I am thought about it for a moment. They expected us to run, Admiral. When we did not, they became confused. They knew they were stronger, but they did not understand why we kept fighting. Every time they thought they had won, we attacked again. It broke something in them, not their ships, their will. This was the pattern that emerged across the war. Human forces were smaller, weaker, less advanced, but they fought with a ferocity that the conclave had never encountered. They did not know when to quit. They did not understand the concept of acceptable losses. They simply kept coming, again and again, until the enemy broke or died. The High Arbiter received reports from the front lines. They were not good. Losses were mounting. Supply lines were in chaos. Commanders were dying faster than they could be replaced. And the humans, those weak, soft, short-lived creatures, showed no signs of stopping. "What are these things?" the High Arbiter demanded. "We outnumber them, we overpower them. Why do they not submit?" An advisor, an ancient being who had studied many species, answered carefully. "Perhaps, High Arbiter, we have misjudged them. Perhaps they are not prey after all." "Then what are they?" The advisor was silent for a long moment. "I do not know, but I begin to fear them." Across the galaxy, species watched the war unfold with growing amazement. The mighty conclave, rulers of the stars for 3,000 years, was being challenged by creatures they had dismissed as vermin. And the vermin were winning. On Earth, General Jin studied the latest reports with grim satisfaction. The war was far from over. Many battles remained. Many lives would be lost, but the impossible had become possible. "They thought we were prey," she said to her staff. "Now they are learning what hunters we truly are." The hunt continued, and with each passing day, the conclave learned more about the terrible mistake they had made. They had awakened something ancient and hungry. They had reminded humanity what it meant to be a predator. And now there was no going back. 3 months into the war, the fighting reached station. It was the conclave's forward command base, a massive structure floating in the heart of a dying star system. From here, the enemy coordinated their entire invasion. If it fell, their forces would be blind and broken. Admiral stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, studying the tactical display. Station was surrounded by 400 warships. Hundreds of weapon platforms orbited it like angry bees around a hive. The defenses were the strongest the conclave had ever built. 200 ships, Park said, reading their own fleet's count. Against 400 plus the station's weapons. 2-to-1 odds, nodded slowly. We have faced worse. Sir, the casualties will be severe. We could lose half our fleet. The admiral turned to face his tactical officer. His expression was calm, but his eyes held something dark and determined. "Lieutenant Commander, do you know why the conclave has ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years? Their technology, their numbers." "No, those are symptoms, not causes." He looked back at the display. "They have ruled because no one has ever truly challenged them. Every species they faced looked at those numbers and surrendered. They calculated the odds and chose survival over victory." He paused. "We are going to do something different." "Sorry." "We are going to show them what happens when you fight someone who does not calculate odds, someone who does not care about acceptable losses, someone who will pay any price to win." His hands tightened into fists. "Today, the conclave learns that there are worse things than death. There is facing an enemy who has decided that victory is worth dying for." The battle began at dawn. Not Earth dawn, but the moment when the dying star at the system's heart released a massive solar flare, temporarily blinding conclave sensors. Human ships rode the flare like surfers on a wave, appearing from the light like ghosts. The conclave fleet reacted with discipline. 400 ships turned to face the threat, weapons blazing, space filled with fire and death. The first human ships died within seconds, torn apart by concentrated firepower. But they kept coming. Captain Wu commanded a squadron of 12 destroyers. His mission was simple: break through the enemy line and reach the station. He knew half his ships would not survive. He ordered the attack anyway. "All units follow me," he broadcast. "We punch through or we die trying. There is no third option." His squadron dove into the heart of the enemy formation. Conclave ships surrounded them, firing from every direction. The destroyer Dawn Runner exploded to his left. The Silver Spear went silent to his right. But Wu kept flying, his ship dancing between explosions, his crew working with desperate precision. They broke through. 6 ships out of 12, battered and burning, but alive. They reached the station's perimeter and launched their boarding pods before the enemy could respond. Ho, the pilot who had flown through hell to get them there, looked at his controls with blood running down his face. A piece of shrapnel had cut his forehead, but he barely noticed. "Captain," he said quietly, "the ship's engines are failing. We cannot retreat." Wu understood. They had known this might happen. "Can you keep us in the fight?" "For a while, long enough to matter." "Then that is what we will do." Ho smiled grimly and turned the dying ship toward the nearest conclave carrier. Its shields were damaged from the battle. If he could hit the weak point, if he could time it perfectly. "For Earth," he whispered, and pushed the engines to full power. The silent moon struck the carrier's shield generator like a hammer. The explosion was visible across the entire battlefield. A carrier 10 times the size of the human destroyer broke apart, its hull splitting open, its weapons falling silent. Inside station, Major Shin led his ground team through corridors filled with smoke and screaming alarms. They had breached the outer hull and were fighting their way toward the command center. Every step was paid for in blood. The conclave soldiers were larger than humans, stronger, better equipped, but they fought the way they had always fought, in rigid formations, following orders, expecting their enemies to break and run. The humans did not run. Private O'Meara took a plasma blast to her shoulder and kept shooting with her other hand. Sergeant Gang was stabbed through the leg and used the wall to stand while emptying his weapon into the enemy. When their ammunition ran out, they used knives. When the knives broke, they used their fists. A soldier, 3 meters tall and covered in natural armor, cornered Shin in a narrow hallway. It raised its weapon, confident in its victory. It had killed many humans today. One more would be easy. Shin did not hesitate. He dove forward inside the alien's reach and drove his combat knife into the gap between its armor plates. The screamed and collapsed. Shin pulled his knife free, checked his wounds, and kept moving. "Keep pushing," he ordered his surviving troops. "We are almost there." Outside, the battle reached its peak. Admiral commanded from his bridge, directing ships like pieces on a chessboard. He had lost 60 vessels, 70, 80. Each death hurt him, but he did not waver. "Concentrate fire on their command ships," he ordered. "Break their coordination." Human weapons, modified by his genius, tore through conclave shields. Ships that had seemed invincible suddenly became vulnerable. Explosions bloomed across the enemy fleet as human missiles found their marks. Dr. Moon Bora had prepared something special for this battle. A broadcast, transmitted on all conclave frequencies, designed to break the enemy's spirit. "Attention, conclave forces," her voice carried through the chaos of battle. "I want to teach you a word, a human word. It is called spite." She paused while explosions lit the darkness outside. Spite means to hurt your enemy even when it costs you everything, even when you know you cannot win, even when death is certain. Humans invented this word because we needed it, because sometimes the only victory possible is making sure your enemy suffers as much as you do. Conclave commanders listened in confusion. What was this? Why would any species embrace such madness? "You outnumber us, you overpower us. You might still destroy us, but understand this, we will never stop fighting. We will make you pay for every world, every ship, every life. And when the war is over, no matter who wins, you will remember us. You will fear our memory, because you will know that there exists a species in this galaxy that would rather burn with you than surrender to you." The broadcast ended. Across the conclave fleet, something changed. The certainty that had sustained them began to crack. These humans were not fighting like prey. They were not fighting like soldiers. They were fighting like something else entirely. Like predators, like monsters, like death itself. Station's command center fell to Shin's team at the same moment the enemy fleet began to retreat. The High Arbiter had escaped on a private vessel, but everything else was lost. The station, the fleet, the forward command structure, all of it destroyed or captured. Admiral watched the enemy ships flee into darkness. His own fleet was battered, reduced by nearly half. But they had won. Against all odds, against all calculations, they had won. Park stood beside him, exhausted and wounded but alive. "Admiral, what now?" He was quiet for a long moment, watching the stars. So many had died today. So many more would die before this war ended. But they had proven something. They had shown the galaxy what humanity really was. "Now we finish what we started," he said. "The Conclave thought they could break us with one blow. They failed. Now they will learn what happens when humans go on the offensive." He turned to face his crew, his surviving officers, the men and women who had fought through hell beside him. "Spread the word to every human in the galaxy. Tell them what happened here today. Tell them we won." His voice carried across the bridge, across the fleet, across the void of space. "And tell them we are not done. The hunt continues until the galaxy understands what we are." In the distance, Conclave ships fled toward there, carrying with them the terrible knowledge of what they had awakened. The prey had become the predator. And there was no going back.